Okay, Brian, in the open I mentioned Roundup resistant weeds, and you said, I'm not scared about them in soybeans at all.
Well, I'm not, and the whole reason why is we have plenty of herbicides that will control every Roundup resistant weed there is. So I think since you're all worried about this,
I'm not worried about it at all, Brian.
Tell me what weed you don't think we can control, or what weed you
well,
have the most
here's
problem
the thing. Here's the thing. When we talk about weeds that Roundup doesn't control anymore, that's fine. So we have one tool that doesn't work. So what tools do work? They may have to be applied at different times in the year, and they may not have the wide window of application as Roundup, but there are still some tools. Like, let's talk about the pigweed species, whether it's water hemp in the north, whether it's Palmer pigweed in the south, it really doesn't matter. I've seen both in fields where it's taken off. They'll both get 10 feet tall, bigger than corn plants, and they will just completely take over a field. So either way, they're tough weeds. Okay. What do you use for them?
So the point is, we want you to start not just with one, but with 2 pre-emerge herbicides. And we're gonna get into more of the post products later on here this spring on Ag PhD. There are just so many pre's. I think today we need to just focus on these pre-emerge herbicides because now is the time we're gonna be thinking about that and getting the products on the farm.
Now when you talk about pre's though, and you say you may need to use 2 pre's, it all depends on where you're at in the country as to how you're gonna do this. Now if you're in the north, like say you're in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, chances are you're gonna use 2 pre's and you're gonna use them at the same time in one application.
Yeah.
Now if you're further in the south where you've got a longer growing season, you probably already have a pre out there. You're probably putting your second pre out now, and you may put another residual on later.
Well, I don't understand that. I mean, if you're gonna put a pre-emerge herbicide on, plant the crop. I mean, I don't understand why we're waiting so long to plant the crop. I don't see that there's any need to do a burn down, then come with another burn down, then finally plant the crop. I just don't understand that. So if it's warm enough that the weeds are growing, probably time to plant. But anyway, here's the, well, I'm just saying, that's what I would do.
See, this is northern or southern envy is what I'm seeing here, Brian. You've still got frost in the ground right up until the day you start planting.
Yep, yeah, you
just wish you had that.
There's snow sitting right in front of me there. So anyway, but here's what it comes down to. You've got to put these 2 pre-emerge herbicides down because post-emerge, we don't have a lot of real great options when you start talking about the pigweed species. Yes, we've got products that'll kill them when they're 2 to 4 inches tall. Problem is with water hemp and Palmer pigweed, they can grow 2 to 4 inches in a day. So we have to leave as many options as possible post-emerge, and we have to get as good a control pre-emerge so we don't have so many weeds coming up later on. So what I would do is I would start with probably one of the yellows. So I'm talking about Treflan, Sonalan, or PROWL. Treflan and Sonalan have to be instantly incorporated. PROWL can be used in a no-till situation, but basically they're all about the same. Sonalan's probably the best, but they're all very close. So I'd use one of those. Plus, I'd use at least one of the other grouping of products, and I'm talking about Valor or Authority or even Sencor there, and those are probably my best options that way.
Well, I think it was interesting. I just went to a meeting with South Dakota's soybean yield contest winners, and the question of herbicide use came up. Number 1 most popular herbicide among South Dakota's soybean yield contest winners was Valor, and number 2 was PROWL, and some of the best guys were using a combination of both.
Right, and that's what you've got to do. You use that combination, you're in pretty good shape. Now, if you want to go with a third product in there, you can certainly do that too. So for example, FMC has a number of combinations with Authority, like Authority MTZ that would probably be the best on water hemp or Palmer pigweed. And Authority MTZ is Authority plus Sencor. So if I did those 2 things, plus I threw a PROWL or Sonalan or Treflan with that, now I'm going to be in great shape, and now I just boosted my control all the way up to probably 99% plus. And when I'm at 99% plus for control, that's awesome. Now I don't have to worry so much post-emerge.
But here's what guys are worried about. Whoa, Brian, that's 3 different chemicals out there.
So?
That's going to be way too expensive.
Well, the last time I checked, soybeans were in excess of $10. Let's just say that I can sell my 2012 crop for $12. We're averaging close to 60 bushel beans on our farm, and if you're not at 60 yet, just keep working on it. You know what? In the last 10 years, we've taken our yields from in the upper 30s up to just about 60 in a 10-year time frame. So you can absolutely do it, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, you multiply out 60 times $12, that's $720 an acre that I've got at risk there. You know, for the last $5, am I really going to chance it? No way. I mean, Treflan's dirt cheap, that's probably $3 an acre. Sencor's dirt cheap, that's another $3 an acre roughly. So what if you spend $8, $10 on a Valor or Authority or something like that? Big deal. Grand total, I still have less than $20 an acre.
Well, it gets back to me, and I just look at this stuff is not expenses. And you say, well, wait a minute, sure it is. On my P&L sheet, that's an expense to me. Well, yes, it is, but it's an investment. And and you have to look at what your return on investment is. And if you don't think it's a good return, just leave some untreated strips out in your field. You'll see very quickly that there's an awfully nice return on these weed control products. And everyone's so worried about, well, what does this cost? What does that cost? Weed control is the cheapest thing in your whole program when you consider seed and you consider fertilizer and all the other inputs you've got. Weed control is cheap, and you still get your very best return by having great weed control in your field.
Okay, so we talked about water hemp and Palmer pigweed. Our answer is probably not a whole lot different for lamb's quarters. Would you say our pre-emerge choices would really be any different for lamb's quarters?
No, that's fine, but let's talk about ragweed, Brian, because there are some differences there. When you've got ragweed, whether it's common ragweed or giant ragweed, those are two weeds, especially up in the northern part of the U.S. here, that we're really having a tough time with controlling with Roundup. What do you suggest in those situations?
Honestly, I don't know if I would do much different. Now, the yellows are not real great on ragweed. They might give you some control, but they're not real great. So that's where I would have that Authority MTZ out there. I'd put a Valor out, and I might even spike that Valor with Sencor, so I get my two pre's out there that have good activity on the ragweed. Now, FMC has a product called Authority First. That's Authority plus First Rate. First Rate is great on ragweed. The problem is if you put it down pre-emerge, now you can't use it post-emerge. So if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of ragweed, not a big deal, and you want to put Authority First down, fine, that is the best pre-emerge product. But then you're limited post-emerge to just FlexStar and Cobra. So it just depends on which direction you want to go with that whole thing.
I'm getting confused, Brian, here. We're about 5 minutes into this discussion. You have not mentioned Sharpen or either of the Optil products, whether it's Optil or Optil Pro.
Yeah, but
they are fantastic. If you've got something you need to burn down, they're fantastic burning down broadleaf weeds.
Yeah, but we're not talking about burn down. I want more than burn down. I need residual also. And the problem with the Sharpen is I can only use an ounce, and that will not give me much residual at all on any of these weeds we've talked about. So yes, Sharpen's a great product for corn, for wheat, for a number of other crops. For beans, it's nothing more than a burn down herbicide. So don't forget that if you're using Sharpen, all you're going to get out of it is burn down and maybe a week's worth of residual.
Well, that's the whole thing, is you're probably going to have to mix something with it to get more residual. Maybe you mix a PROWL in the mix. That's why you see, like with Optil, it's not just Sharpen. They've also got some Pursuit in there. Personally, I think the Pursuit rate's too high, and we can talk about that on another show. But now we've got the new product.
Pursuit's not great on water hemp, Palmer pigweed, or lamb's quarters, or ragweed. I mean, it's okay on ragweed, but it's not fantastic. So that's the whole thing.
It's shooting at some different
weeds.
weeds.
So we just haven't addressed that because it's not the best on those weeds. But anyway, once again, you've got a lot of different combination products you can use. We would encourage you to put 2 pre-emerge herbicides down, if not 3 in soybeans, if you're concerned about Roundup resistant weeds.
Well, one of those potential weeds could be our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?